All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our live online only Investors Performance Group meeting tonight, August 21st. We are coming to you with some pretty exciting stuff. There we go. One second. We're going to be coming to you guys with some exciting stuff tonight with our tales from the trenches. But of course, we're going to be giving you guys lots of action-packed value tonight as well. We decided to go live only tonight online because we wanted to make sure that we still had an IPG, and sometimes the summer is definitely slower. And we've got a tale for you guys that should really kind of open everyone's eyes onto what's happening out there to investors when you try to think outside the box, and it's going to be pretty exciting. But without further ado, we're going to go straight into the content here. So we're going to bring up the slides. So here we go. And of course, this is the Investors Performance Group meeting for August 2025. Investors Performance Group is proudly brought to you by the Kelly Fry team. We are a full service real estate investor team that is here to help serve your guys' needs, building your portfolio in and around the Lower Mainland, Fraser Valley, and out in the Chilliwack and District area. Of course, we have all the professionals you guys need to be successful, including lawyers, accountants, home inspectors, contractors, everything like that. So if you guys are looking to grow your portfolio, we are here to serve you guys. And for tonight, we are going to go right into the market update. What is happening in the market as we start to get out of the summer and into the fall? These are the things you need to be paying attention to so you can take the right amount of action. Then we've got our tales from the trenches with Kelly Fry, her quasi-criminal investigation. What do we mean by quasi-criminal? What happened to her? Why was she investigated for running Airbnbs? And what are some things you guys have to look out for to hopefully avoid that? And then lastly, we're going to do some hot deals. We got 3 for them coming at you guys tonight. And then we're going to wrap up. So this will be probably a much quicker meeting for those of you guys who normally join us online, but should still be very valuable and action-packed for you guys. And again, we love to see your comments. We love to see you guys engage in the chat. So if you guys are watching us live, make sure you guys drop your comments in the chat. Drop any questions you have. We are monitoring them. I can see I'll watch 10 minutes and leave and come back. No worries. We are happy to have you guys here. So feel free, engage with us. And don't forget, you can take some snapshots as well. Share it on social media. You can tag Kelly, myself, or the Kelly Fry team. We'd love to know what you guys are taking away from this. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. What has been happening in the market? Now, it's been a bit of an interesting summer, to say the least. I know I can speak probably for both Kelly and I, where we have seen some kind of, sometimes we think things are moving one way, then they start moving the other way. So we're going to dissect that for you guys. What happened through the July months, what we're feeling boots on the ground right now. So as we head into the fall, you're taking decisive action out there for your own portfolio. Now, as you can see, home sale conditions are strong for home buyers this summer, but the persistent gap between buyers and sellers' price expectations continues to suppress the sales. And we are definitely noticing that right now when it comes time to offers coming in. We are basically seeing people writing offers, sellers not accepting them, and things now just sitting on the market. We're experiencing it quite a bit in the market right now. So first things first, we always like to take a look at what is happening on the inventory side of things. We look at supply, we look at the demand, and the relationship between the two. Now, as we can see here, with the inventory, we did see a slight decrease in most of the markets. Chilliwack is up a little bit through July. We're sitting at about 16,000. It looks like that's 16,872 listings in the Greater Vancouver area, 9,399 in the Fraser Valley, and 1,445 in Chilliwack. So while we have seen the inventory drop a little bit over the summertime, that's typical of the normal summer months, we're not seeing it drop as drastically. If we look here in this area over to the left, we can see the same time last year, we did see some drops, got into that fall market. And as we got through the fall into the winter months, we will see a big drop. We're going to have to monitor that to see if that's the same trend this year as we go. And now let's look at these sales. Now, this is where the big discrepancy exists. We can see it's kind of leveled off. Greater Vancouver, 2,281 sales. We're got 1,107 out in Fraser Valley and 211 in Chilliwack. So sales are pretty low. So while we do see a little bit of an upward trend in the market here, it's kind of flat, kind of almost down a little bit and down in Chilliwack. We're still not at the point where the sales are matching what's happening on the demand aspect. We are still quite far away from the inventory. Again, there's about 16,600 listings. So what does that mean for prices then? When we really look at what that means, as we can see here, prices are coming down. We are seeing that downward pressure right now, which if you've got properties and you're able to hold on to them, you probably just want to sit and hold on to them right now. If you're thinking about liquidating any properties and you really need to get out of something or cash out right now to do something different, then I would recommend probably getting your properties on the market right now. As we're seeing that downward pressure right now, you don't want to be chasing the market down. Price appropriately on the market in order for you to have success. Now, I will tell a little bit of a story here, and this is actually Kelly's story and Kelly's thunder that I'm going to steal a little bit, but we did just get a listing out in the Fleetwood area. It's a beautiful 4-bedroom, two and a half bath house. It's like, I think it's 2,300 square feet on an 8,000 square foot lot. Beautiful little property. Needs a little bit of work here and there, but overall very livable. That area specifically is still going gangbusters. We got an offer within 4 days on that. So this is very market specific. There are things that are still moving in the area. So keep that in mind. Pricing strategy also comes into play. Kelly was very strategic with her pricing because she knew in the area another property went for sale and had 20 offers. Yes, even in this market. So she priced it appropriately and got it moved very, very quickly for her sellers. Now, we look at the sales to active listing ratio. So this is going to indicate the type of market that we are in. So if we take a look at what's going on in the different markets, we can see that Greater Vancouver is sitting at about a 13.5% sales to active ratio. The Fraser Valley is at 11.8, and then Chilliwack District at 14.6. Now, to understand what this really means in terms of what type of market we're in, basically, if we're at about 12% or lower, we consider that a buyer's market. And when we continue to see an extended period of time in that buyer's market category where sales to active ratios are below the 12% mark, we will see continued downward pressure on the value of homes. So as we can see right now, the Fraser Valley is definitely into that buyer's market territory. Now, saying that, the Greater Vancouver is just slightly into the buyer's market at 13.5. They're just above that 12%. So it's not like they're, very well off comparatively. We are still bordering on that buyer's market. And Chilliwack District doing a little bit better, closer into that balanced market than the others. However, we're still seeing that it depends on the market type and the market segment in which you are buying in. Another metric that is important for us to take a look at as buyers specifically, and also for sellers, because it sets the expectation of what we can probably be selling at, is the percentage of original price. What are things selling at compared to their list price right now? As we can see here, the Greater Vancouver area is selling at about 96.1% of their list. We can see that continued trend downward as buyers are getting more aggressive on the market, sending lower offers, and sellers are starting to accept those lower offers. We're seeing that trend come down. Fraser Valley is at 95.8 and Chilliwack District at 95.5%. So why would we use this as a bit of a metrics then to determine if we're getting a good value or not? Well, my thought process is if you can beat this average in the market right now, you're actually getting something below market, or it's one more way to find out if you're getting a property below market. If someone's got a property listed, let's say for, let's say $1 million, and you're getting in and you're buying it at 90% or $900,000, well, you're beating those averages by about $50,000, making your money on the buy. That's a pretty wild example. In most cases, you're probably going to get it just slightly under those marks. So if the average is 96 and you say get 94 and you're beating it by 2%, you're still making money on the buy. So we want to keep an eye on that. Now, that doesn't mean, though, and I made some videos about this recently, that you can throw extremely low offers in where you're going like 30% under the asking price. Because in those situations, the data isn't showing that you're going to be successful with those types of offers. And what you're going to do is just alienate sellers right now. So yes, I encourage you guys going out, putting out offers, throw them in that's a little lower, see what you can get off the price. But you still have to be realistic that you're negotiating with someone in their home. And if you really want to buy the property and the numbers make sense, offer something that's low enough to get the conversation started and still make a great buy if you can get it. But don't go so atrociously low that all you do is alienate the sellers on the other end. And that's something that we are seeing that's starting to happen in the market, is these ridiculously low offers where the sellers go, even if I was desperate, I wouldn't sell it for that price. And then the buyers go, well, I'm not going to buy it for anything more. And then everyone just wasted some time. So keep that in mind. All right. Let's take a look at what is happening in some of the markets that we operate in. We're going to start out east as we normally do, and we're going to work our way west. We got a few markets that we're going to take a look at. And we've also broken down in the last couple months into some sub-markets. I think it's very important for us to take a look at these sub-markets so you understand that no matter where you're buying, you're not buying necessarily with the statistics that are showing here. You're buying based on that sub-market statistic. We're talking neighborhood statistics. Again, Fleetwood homes priced at around that 1.425 million, they're clearly moving, unlike some other market areas. So understanding these dynamics is very, very key. So some of the markets that we operate pretty heavily in, we will break down a lot further. So taking a look at Chilliwack right now, Chilliwack actually saw some gains over last summer. So it's up about 6.3%, but we're still just over 900,000 as an average sale right now in the Chilliwack market. Of course, many factors play in. Are we talking about downtown Chilliwack? Are we up in Promontory or Sardis? This makes a huge difference. Days on market are rising. They're at about 38 right now days. And we can see the inventory continue to rise over last year at 13.5%, sitting at a total detached right now of 319 listings. Townhouses took it on the chin only slightly, down 3.6% to an average of around 602. Days on market, it has taken a month and a half now almost to sell a townhouse. So if you are a townhouse seller in Chilliwack, be prepared. It might take a little longer. However, saying that, we do see that the inventory is down by 10%. So maybe as inventory continues to decline, we might see those days on market shrink. So it's something to keep an eye on. Condos, though, definitely took a major hit in the Chilliwack market. This comes down to an affordability standpoint. When you can buy houses and detached properties that are still relatively affordable getting into the market, why would someone want to go into the condo market and pay, especially for some of the newer condos, depending on what they qualify for? So they're down 17.3% in that market. Listings are down, however, 8%, but it's taking 53 days now on average to sell a condo in the Chilliwack market. So keep that in mind if you are looking to sell, but obviously take advantage if you are looking to buy. I definitely think the way the inventory is going in that area, there are some amazing opportunities out there for cash flow and for you guys to get money on the buy. And we're going to show you some of those examples coming up later in the hot deals. Abbotsford market, though, Abbotsford detached did pretty well on the rebound over last year, up 12.2% at $1.411 million. Inventory is only up slightly at 6.5%, but the days on market are ticking up. They're up 78%, and that's 50 days now to sell a house in the Abbotsford market. Townhouses took it on the chin in the biggest way in Abbotsford, down 9.1%. That's $650,000 as your average. Inventory is up 43%. So that's going to continue to put pressure on the housing, the townhouse market right now in Chilliwack, and average days is just over a month to sell. Condos, they took it pretty well. They're actually up over last year, $474,000 is your average right now. Inventory is up quite a bit, though, 41.5%, and days on market are climbing at 20% increase to 36 days. All right, Mission market. Mission is another scenario here where we've seen some drops across the board. A big part of that is due to the inventory availability there. Again, this is primarily a detached market. We talk about it quite often, but we are seeing that there are some opportunities right now for buyers to buy some land. If you can sit on those properties for a long period of time, the city is pushing a lot of incentives to get some densification in. So I think there's a great opportunity to play in the detached market, buy a property, make sure that it cash flows, and sit and hold on to that until you maybe have some developers. And make sure you're checking those neighborhood or community plans to know where those zones are that they're targeting. But detached is down just under a million now, down 10.4%. Inventory is up 8.5 days on market, 42 days right now. Townhouses are down 3.6% at an average of 618, taking 52 days to sell a townhouse right now. And there's about 47 listings on the market. And then for the condos, they took a bigger hit at down 8.5%. But again, not a ton of inventory overall. We're talking 43 listings. It's up 13%. Days on market about 41. Kathy, absolutely. I think it is a great time to buy townhouses. I totally agree with you on that one. There's some really good opportunities in all market segments if you know what you're looking for, what your strategy is, and of course, following the trends in the numbers. But everything comes down to the numbers. Make sure you're buying smart and analyzing very conservatively, in my opinion, these days. All right, let's go to Langley. Langley, oh, we got an error on the Langley stats here. It says that detached is 558,000. I think it's probably 1.558. It's down 4.6%, but inventory is up 840 listings, 15.4%, and about 38 days right now to sell a detached home. Condos, townhouses, both down 8% across the board. Inventory is very similar across the board. So again, I think there's a couple more errors on this one. I apologize about that for anyone who's relying on that. If you are looking in the Langley market, shoot me a message at Cameron at Kelly Fry Team, and we can get you the updated numbers for those ones. All right, here we go. Here's the updated numbers because we're going to compare Langley versus Langley City. This is what we like to do right now, where we're showing what the average is in the area versus what's been happening in some of the micro markets. Now, as we can see here, we're comparing the whole of Langley as an average versus those micro markets like Langley City, where detached has actually taken a massive hit, down 20.5% in Langley City, where Langley as a whole, again, there was an error on those previous slides, it's actually up 0.8%. So while Langley in general, certain areas are bringing up Langley, the trends upwards, Langley City itself has been depressed. We can see here the biggest part of it is because the inventory increase across Langley is 15.4%, but in Langley City specifically, it had a gain of 43.2%. If we look at townhouses, the townhouse market was down 8% in Langley as a whole, but down heavier in the Langley City market. And then condos took a bigger hit as well in Langley City, down 7.1%. Again, apologize about the previous slide. However, there, if you want to take a screenshot of that one, you'll be able to do your comparisons for Langley and Langley City. All right. And now let's take a look at Maple Ridge. Maple Ridge is down 5.8% in the detached market, average of 1.3% right now. Listings are up. Listings to 651 units. We're down days on market, though, which is interesting to see. So we'll have to watch that trend. Townhouses did rise a little bit, 3.5%, down 18.5% in total inventory. So this might be one of those markets where the townhouse market might be showing some strength in the Maple Ridge area versus detached. Again, this is very, very market dependent. And then the condo market took a hit at 10.4% down, and listings are down a little bit as well. So, and again, breaking out to the segments here, while the detached market is taking a bit of a hit right now, the Cottonwood area is actually faring pretty well. It's gained about 1.4%, and the inventory has dropped by 2.6%. So again, looking at those micro markets, it maybe looks like Maple Ridge is taking a bit of a hit, but if you're looking in Cottonwood, there's some strength in that market. Townhouses are up 6.3% in Cottonwood, and in Cottonwood, there are no condos in that area, so there's no data for us to look there. But in Maple Ridge East Central, we can see a little bit of a different tale. We can see that the detached market is kind of sitting with the same similar averages right now as the Maple Ridge as a whole. Inventory is up 13% there. The townhouses in this specific neighborhood has taken a bit of a hit. While as a whole it's up, this neighborhood is down 5.5%. And condos in this area are also doing worse than the average at down 13.1%. All right, and then there's the Surrey market. And for anyone who's been watching us, we talked about how Surrey has been kind of struggling a little bit in the condo market, specifically Wally. We are going to do that breakout again. Detached overall is up 12.4%, but inventory is climbing. Townhouses took a hit on the chin there at 8.1, but condos 11.4% down. That is a big drop from last year to this year, and that's Surrey in general. Now, when we look at the Wally area, though, it's interesting to see what's actually happened. So Wally detached took a hit of about 5.3% on the detached, down 14.9 in the townhouse market. But last month, the Wally area took a massive drop. This month, we've actually seen over last year a gain in the Wally area. So again, it is very interesting to look at these micro markets to see where things are moving in the different directions. Now, what could have happened here is that we might have seen a few newer projects complete and start to put units back on the market. Those newer products are going to have a higher price point compared to older products, and that might bring the averages up as well. So we want to keep an eye on those trends as we go forward. And then lastly, we got the Coquitlam market here for those who invest in the Coquitlam area, down 1.9% in the detached. We're up 1.8% in townhouses and down 7.6% in condos. So that is your guys' market update. So what can we take from all of this? At the end of the day, I think there's some amazing opportunities for you guys to go out, write offers, get properties under contract so you guys can start taking advantage of the market that is really poised for investors. However, make sure you're communicating with the agent you're using. And of course, we are here to help you guys if you are in and around the Lower Mainland to really dissect what's going on in those micro markets, analyze those properties very detailed, and make sure that you guys are getting great monies on the buy and of course, strong cash flow. All right, we're going to move into our next segment here, which is why I know most of you guys made sure to join us online. Again, feel free to take any photos you guys are doing. Make sure you guys are also hitting that subscribe button on the channel. You'll see it over next to my name here while you're watching. Help me grow this channel as well. Really, really appreciate it. And we're going to hear from Kelly Fry today. So Kelly, I'm going to bring you up onto the stage here. Where's my cursor? Let's go. All right, Kelly, welcome to Tales from the Trenches. You're no stranger to this segment here. So what are you going to be talking about today before we bring up your presentation and your slides?
Well, Cameron, I'm going to be talking about my Airbnb adventures, which escalated in the last few months. And I'm going to tell people what happens when the government pursues you if they believe that you've violated the 90-day requirement. But I'm going to start my presentation by starting where it all began so people can understand where I started and how I ended up where I ended up.
Excellent. Well, Kelly, we've got your slides up. We're ready to go for you.
Okay, so it all began in 2018 when I decided to Airbnb my basement suite. At the time, I lived in Maple Ridge, and this was my home that I lived in. And my first step was really to contact my friend Tammy, who was my lifeline, really, my stager designer, to help me execute on this. Because as much as I'm good with numbers, with my accounting background, creativity and design is not my strength. And she has always been the one who has done all the shopping for my home, all the staging for my clients, all the renovations for our investments. And so she was the perfect person to help with this Airbnb rollout. So what had happened was I had listed a home for sale in Surrey in the Clayton area, and my client had a basement suite that was 2-bedroom. And as part of the marketing for the sale of the home, he gave me his spreadsheets that showed me all of the income he had made in the last 2 years in his basement suite furnished. And honestly, it was such an eye-opener. I had no idea that there was such a differential in income. So I decided that I should be doing this. At the time, I was renting my 1-bedroom basement suite for about $1,400 to $1,450, and I knew that the potential was greater. So the accountant in me didn't want to spend too much money on this venture because it was an untested concept for me, and it was Maple Ridge instead of Surrey. And so I said to Tammy, I want to keep it as cheap as possible. Can we work with some pieces that I have? And can you keep it, as cheap as possible, which was challenging for her because she's a luxury kind of gal, grew up in West Van, but she did her best to shop at the Brick with store models and fill in pieces, and then the Dollarama to get all the supplies. And I got rolling with this first Airbnb. So this is a picture of what the suite looked like. And I kind of gasped in horror at the color scheme and everything because we evolved over time into much nicer design and much fancier furnishings, but this was the first one. And despite this, scary design that I had going on here, it was full 330 days of the year. Now, it brings back fond memories because at the time I was not skilled with pricing, but I started off at $65 to $72 a night. It was a one bedroom, and that worked out to about 27 and a half days a month that I was full with my basement suite. And that's about $22,440. There was a bit of an Airbnb charge of 3%, but the tenants, the guests themselves paid for the cleaning, so that was built in. So it was a good return. And at the time, many people would say to me, well, no, only Vancouver is where people Airbnb. And I would say, no, you don't understand. Maple Ridge is a great market for Airbnb. And they couldn't believe it. And I'll tell you the reason why. If you've ever seen the hotels in Maple Ridge, there's only 2 of them, and this is one of them, and it burnt down in 2020 and still has not been repaired. I don't know what the issue is, but the other option that you have is the Best Western across the street from that. And if you're from Maple Ridge, you know that that is next to a really rough trailer park, and you don't really want to stay there. So for people online, they might not figure that out, but people that knew where they were going in Maple Ridge would rather stay in an Airbnb. And with a population of about 92,000, that explains why my occupancy was so high. So as I rolled out the Airbnbs, I got more rolling in Maple Ridge because I knew it was a good market. Now, you can see from this photo that we sort of evolved with better, fancier furnishings, and we started adding desks for workspaces and much higher caliber. This is in a suite, a ground level suite in an apartment building that I recently had to shut down. But I'd like to dedicate my presentation today to my friend Tammy. We lived an incredible journey together for 14 years, and especially for the 7 years that we rolled out the Airbnbs. She helped me grow to 23 properties in my portfolio, and she did all of my shopping. She coordinated the deliveries. She coordinated with the handyman for them to set up the internet cable, so we always had it ready when we launched a new one. And we lost her to cancer in April, and unfortunately, she's left a gaping hole in our lives, and her influence is felt in many of my properties, as she was responsible for all the renovations, all the staging for my clients, and of course, all the shopping for my Airbnbs. Now, the success of my Airbnbs grew, and as it did, I started to enter into different markets, because as a realtor, I felt that this was a cash flow opportunity for investors, and the more that I could roll out, the more I'd be able to help investors know what the occupancies were in different areas, what the rates would be like, and it gave me lots of insight for the demand. So at my peak, I had 1 in Coquitlam in my basement suite, which is where I ended up moving to, 1 in Surrey, 1 in Abbotsford, 2 in Langley, 2 in Chilliwack, 5 in Maple Ridge, and 11 in Mission. And Mission, quite frankly, was quite successful because it only has 1 hotel. And if you have even a soccer tournament or a hockey tournament going on, the number of kids can just fill up that hotel alone. And at the time, with the pipeline workers on the Trans Mountain Pipeline, they were spilling out into Chilliwack, Abbotsford, and Mission. So we had a good run in Mission. So the Airbnbs that I had were a combination of condos, townhouses, basement suites. I had 1 house, and I had apartment buildings where I was a part owner in, and I basically did arbitrage. So I would pay rent as a tenant to the investment group, and then I would collect the premium on all of the additional rent. I'd furnish them and pay for the utilities. There were daily issues that happened. This was a full-on business at one point. I mean, we had police incidents, we had drug addicts, we had prostitution, we had damage on a regular basis. And so we kind of built up into a team where we had cleaners and a concierge and handyman who were all ready on the fly to deal with problems, which we would typically find out about either the next morning when checkout happened, when the cleaner arrived to turn over the units. And so this is what my platform on Airbnb looked like in terms of the calendar and all the listings. Cameron has this new software that's fancy that shows it in movement, but everything changed though in 2024 when the government announced that we would no longer be able to do Airbnbs in population areas of more than 10,000. And there would be a principal residence requirement that would allow you to use a basement suite or an ADU. And the definition of short-term rental became 90 days or longer, or like shorter than 90 days was short-term, which if you've been an Airbnb operator, you know that the average stay might be 3 to 5 days, some are maybe 14 days, but 90 days is very rare. Even travel nurses are, 6 weeks. So another key thing came along at that time, which was a requirement coming for a business license number on the platform. Now, up until that point, Vancouver required a license, but every other area that I dealt in did not require a license to be live on the platform. And then in November of that year, some communities became exempt, that were exempt because they were under 10,000 population, had the opportunity to opt into the rules, and they announced like very large fines that would be coming. But I kind of knew from the information that the enforcement and the registry were planned for 2025. So as I tried to figure out how to extricate myself from the situation, I knew that there was some time. Now, in 2025, on May 1st, the provincial government registry was launched, and all hosts, platforms, strata hotels, etc., had to be registered in BC. And then on June 1st, the short-term rental platforms, Airbnb, VRBO, had to basically pull down any ads for periods of under 90 days. So what actually happened was they filled in our calendars for any remaining ones that I had to 90-day minimums. And then June 23rd was kind of the date that the unregistered short-term listings would all be canceled, okay? Because they knew that there had been previous bookings. But in my mind, I thought I had until June 23rd in terms of the enforcement. So that was a mistake on my part. I wasn't paying close enough attention. And the legislation basically, is so ineffective in terms of expecting us to do it only in our principal residence, and then to think that for those of us that were operating at a high level, we could unwind this all very quickly. Now, how things unfolded for me was that once I heard the news and I knew this ban was going to be a reality, I had to undo, I figured, 23 Airbnbs in some way. I had to, close 23 hydro accounts and also the internet cable that was all set up. And I had loans left and right that I financed all of the acquisitions of all the furnishings, all the supplies, because I was using the cash flow to pay down all these loans. Those would still have to be paid, even though the source of the revenue was now going to be gone. So this is my longtime mentor, Frederick, who's now 94, and his wife, Katerina. I decided to adopt Frederick's mentality. Now, he's no longer in the state where I can talk to him about a problem like I did for 22 years. He is the most brilliant real estate mind I've ever known. He unfortunately is in advanced dementia, but I spoke to his wife, who now handles all of their portfolios, and she said to me, Kelly, just wait, things could change. And this would have been, this photo was taken maybe in the fall of 2024. And so I thought, well, she could be right. And also we had an upcoming election, and I knew that if the Conservatives were elected in the provincial election, they would reverse the decision on this Airbnb ban that was coming. And they were very vocal about that. So I was hopeful that maybe that wouldn't happen. But I decided to start, after the news came out about the ban, I would start advertising furnished long-term rentals and see how it did. And gradually, I would turn over 1 or 2 a month. I was getting them booked. My husband became extremely ill with heart failure. He was hospitalized for, almost 2 months. I had to call 911 several times, and it was a very precarious time. So I was trying to juggle the stress of this Airbnb ban, not knowing how I was going to exit this, and his health, and worried about him. I had one townhouse that I knew would not cash flow if it wasn't an Airbnb. So I had to figure out how to sell that quickly to mitigate that loss. And I was boosting all my ads on Facebook Marketplace so that I could get the best chance of getting tenants that would want a furnished rental. I knew that I would have to store some of my furniture. Wasn't sure how much I would turn over long-term, but that there would be some, especially the townhouse that I sold, that I would have to store. So I started to have to think about where I was going to store these things. No, by the end of 2024, I had converted about 10 of the units over. As 2025 began, I knew I was going to have to pick up speed as the enforcement action was going to be looming. And one of the difficulties that I faced emotionally about removing the furnishings that were all set up, that so much pride went into them, was knowing that I was letting go of Tammy if I let all of her work get pulled apart, which is why I was trying to rent as many as I could long term so I could keep, the beautiful settings of everything in the units. But I had to come to terms with the fact that I had to start pulling furniture rapidly and storing it and returning a bunch of my units to my property manager to handle unfurnished. Now, on June 17th, the day of reckoning came. I was out of town and an email appeared in my inbox. And there's nothing worse than an email in your inbox that has a title, the Short-Term Rental Branch Notice of Investigation. My heart sank as I read the email because it wasn't the first legal challenge that I faced in 2025, but it was the first short-term rental legal challenge. However, having been guided by Frederick and his wife, who at any given moment were in 3 lawsuits, because that's just what happens at a certain point when you take a lot of action, I thought, well, I'm being tested yet again. So when the letter came, it said that there was a notice of investigation and a requirement to provide records related to my properties, that I would have to include they included copies of the Short-Term Rental Act and the regulations for my reference. And they urged me to carefully review these documents, and they outlined important legal obligations and requirements and the necessary records that I would have to submit by July 7th. So they gave me a very tight window for this, and thanks for your prompt attention to this matter. Now, as a licensed individual, it's very, very concerning because anytime you're targeted for anything, you have to be very cautious. So my first call, as always, was to my favorite lawyer, Stuart Ross, and I said, help. I had sent him the email, but that call didn't go so well. It went from bad to worse. And this is a picture of, Stuart and I talking, not at that time, but I went to, Cameron was with me as I was on the phone, and Stuart said to me, well, Kelly, I can't help you. This is a quasi-criminal matter. And I said, what? What are you talking about? And he explained to me that there was like civil law and criminal law, and that a government infraction falls in a gray area that has to be addressed by a criminal lawyer. So he told me I was going to have to hire a criminal lawyer and that he would refer me one. Well, that was a first. So Cameron and I were at a conference, as you can see in this photo. My mind was racing at the conference. I thought, what if they make me the poster child of who they're targeting to go after with fines? Everybody loves to go after realtors, especially ones that have multiple units in Airbnb. So the Short-Term Rental Compliance and Enforcement Unit is the one who sent me this notice of investigation. And I have it on the screen here. It's small font, but I'm going to read some of it to you. Basically, the CEU of the Short-Term Rental Branch and the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs are responsible for compliance with the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act. By way of this letter, we are providing you with informal notice that we have opened an investigation under Section 22 of the Act into your compliance with the provisions of the Act and the regulations. This notice provided to you as a courtesy and is not required by the Act or regulation. They then cited 4 of my property addresses, which they pulled off the platform. Now, these were 4 remaining ones because I was down to 4. I was negotiating with a tenant to take one of the 4. I had 3 left, and I figured I would have to convert them to 90 days on the platform before that June 23rd deadline. Now, depending on the results of their inquiries, they might decide to expand or reduce the scope of the investigation. They explained that it's at the preliminary stages, they have not made any findings yet or come to any conclusions, that in conducting the investigation, they might have informal discussions with me, and they might deliver me a formal requirement to produce records. They would expect and appreciate my cooperation. Failure to comply with false or misleading information would result in a penalty of $5,000 for the first contravention, $7,500 for the second, and potentially $10,000 for a third or subsequent contravention. The investigation could lead to the issuance of compliance orders under Section 24 and the imposition of administrative penalties. You'll be provided with a formal opportunity to be heard before we impose any compliance orders or administrative penalties as a result of this. And basically, the authority has been delegated to them for these investigations, and I have the short-term rental investigator signing off on this. I had no idea if the fines were going to be applicable to every property that they found. I had no idea if the fines would be for every single day that they were booked. Good news was it was only 4 they were coming after me for, but they were asking me in the records for 2024 records. And I thought, oh my God, I was still running quite a few then. So the requirement to provide records, which I now have on the screen, this letter is a formal requirement to provide records under Section 23 of the Short-Term Rental Accommodations and a demand for the production of records. In this notice, you're advised that the Compliance and Enforcement Unit has commenced an investigation regarding your compliance, and this sets out the particulars of the matter under investigation. Under the authority pursuant to Section 23, they are requesting the following records: evidence that each property identified in the notice of investigation has had a property host who used the property as their principal residence in 2024. Well, we know that that wasn't the case. Copies, screenshots of your short-term rental platform account records or calendars displaying the dates that they were occupied in 2024. Documentation related to short-term rental activities, including the dates of occupancy for 2024, any additional information or documents that are believed to be relevant, and submit these records by July 7th. If you need additional time to gather information, you may request an extension. Failure to comply, we're back to all the penalties again, and they provide copies of the Act and regulations for me. And if I have any questions or need assistance, please contact the delegated investigator. Well, I learned a long time ago, in any kind of matter, never speak to them directly, always have a good lawyer. So I reached out to the lawyer that was recommended to me, and the lawyers were very concerned. They were very unaware of how this act was going to be executed with fines and everything. They told me that the best possible outcome would be ultimately if there was a compliance order that I had to sign as an agreement. The next best, like the second worst scenario, would be if they administered penalties to me. And the third worst would be an injunction, which I don't even know what that is. But fortunately, the first thing the criminal lawyer did was he got an extension so we could gather our evidence. And then he had me explain my story. And then he prepared a letter for me, which is what they submitted to the investigator. So I'll read you that letter, and then you'll see some of the important points. So I write to you in respect of my client, Kelly Fry. Ms. Fry, thank you for speaking with me earlier this month and allowing us some additional time to gather the required information. At the outset, I advise that since the introduction of the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act, Ms. Fry's made every effort to completely divest herself of any short-term rentals that she owned. However, this was complicated and delayed by her husband's serious illness that saw him critically ill between July 2024 and mid-January 2025. I have provided medical and insurance documentation attached to this correspondence, including times when she had to call 911 for an ambulance to save her husband's life. Her focus was understandably on her partner during this 7-month period and not on her properties, but I want to reiterate that this does not mean she does not take the STRAA seriously. Had her husband not been so ill, it is likely Ms. Fry would have complied far sooner. I also submit on behalf of Ms. Fry that getting into compliance has not been easy and has already come with significant financial hardship. This process alone, even leaving aside the potential penalties she now faces, has already deterred her from ever being in non-compliance with the STRAA again. I will now address the identified properties, all of which have been correctly identified as not complying at some point in time after coming into force of the STRAA. With regards to the first condo that he describes here, Ms. Fry purchased the condo after the pre-sale closed. She bought out her partners at a significant loss. She was deterred from selling as the loss would be enormous, and the interest rate on the mortgage was very high. Ms. Fry was in a difficult position financially and rented it short-term while seeking a long-term tenant to avoid a continual erosion of her finances. The Airbnb history is provided. The last Airbnb tenant moved out on May 17, 2025, and she is now a client that has sold his condo, leasing the unit for 90 days until he finds a new property in compliance with the STRAA. Ms. Fry has been advertising the unit at a continual reduction in rent to attract a long-term tenant, and the current offering is $23.75, which puts her $500 of monthly negative cash flow. Nevertheless, she will take the financial hit to remain in compliance with the STRAA. This unit will not be rented out again unless it is in compliance. Then he indicates a sample of my Facebook ad as a link. He goes on to the next property, which is a house, and explains that I made efforts to get a long-term tenant. I secured some non-Airbnb tenants. He gives the name and says they rented from December 10th, 2024 for 3 months. However, after they moved out, I again resorted to Airbnb, and I continually dropped my rent from $4,500 to $4,050, and I was accruing substantial losses. He attached the Airbnb rentals, and then he said, however, since that time, Ms. Fry has secured a long-term tenant who signed the 1-year lease below on June 26th, and rentals started on July 1st. All of this is true. Then he goes on to indicate the other 2 properties that were in apartment buildings. He describes the situation and circumstance with each of those rentals and includes the ad. And so then he gives a summary. While it has taken much longer to bring each unit into compliance than Ms. Fry had hoped, and she has demonstrated all properties, she will be in full compliance with the STRAA going forward. In other words, there'll be 0 short-term rentals going forward. And he said, I submit to you, you will not see Ms. Fry in non-compliance with the STRAA again. This has already been a tremendous learning experience that has come at significant financial hardship throughout this process. Ms. Fry has become familiar with both the Act and the regulations. She fully understands and appreciates the importance of compliance with the STRAA and assures you you will not come across any of her properties again. If you do, she understands she will unlikely receive any leniency in the future, and a strong warning has been received and a lesson learned. I am hopeful you will take the position, you will take all that has been provided into consideration and determine no further action is required. Should you require any information, please do not hesitate to contact me. And he left it at that. Then on August 7th, the lawyer decides to call the investigator because we've heard nothing. And the investigator says, oh yeah, we closed the file. No indication to me, no indication to him. So the lawyer says, well, can you please send us something in writing? So he gets this email. Hi, Jordan, your email was received. The documents you provided were reviewed. After reviewing the documents you provided, we closed this investigation on the basis of voluntary compliance and the assumption that Kelly Fry would remain in compliance going forward. If you require anything else, let us know. And just like that, I was free again. Now, here's the invoice from the lawyer. Ironically, the bill is exactly the amount of my retainer, $5,000 plus GST and PST, $5,600 for this lesson. But it didn't end there because the lawyers were concerned that I might have an obligation to my profession to report this to BCFSA. So I had to call my BCFSA lawyer, and for the information of figuring out that I did not have to report it because it was simply an investigation, he too sent me a bill for $1,000. So anyway, that's the end of the story on what happened and how you need to protect yourself in a government situation like this. It concludes my journey as an Airbnb operator with the highs and lows that came along with it. There were so many stories that happened along the way that I could do a separate presentation just on those. The stabbing incident at one of my condos was probably the craziest one, though. And one day, I'll tell the story of that one. It hit the news and everything. But Airbnb hosts provide a much needed service for so many people and there's going to be so many that find difficulty in getting accommodations. As I like to say, the hotel cartel won the battle, and the government used the false narrative of supplying affordable housing to people by shutting these down. But they were really just trying to win votes. So that concludes my presentation on the worst possible outcome if you're caught by the government with Airbnbs.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing that tale. And definitely, we have had several over the years of your Airbnb tales. I still remember the stabbing incident. I would say very fondly because your facial reaction when you got the news that it was your property was like, "Oh my God, I gotta go! I gotta go!" Like we had a lot of good stories that came out of those. Yeah, Kathy said, I'm so disgusted by the government body that I cannot even ask questions. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely incredible to see how much control the government does put onto property owners in British Columbia. And again, we don't say that, there's still opportunities out there in this province. You got to work and be adaptable to be able to still profit in this province. It's still one of the best provinces from a long-term perspective. However, we have to navigate these constant changing hurdles that Kelly had to. Kelly, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with anyone who is looking to do anything, like investment wise right now? What is your go-to strategy to continue to profit?
Well, I'd say right now, just from experience here and what we've seen, there are many pre-sales that aren't closing right now. There are many distressed sellers. We helped 3 people in the last month, all who walked away from their deposits and even injected cash. And I think the least of them was $50,000 loss. We had one at $105,000 and one at $133,000. So the buyers who picked up those deals got themselves some great properties, and they will do well. Unfortunately, for those who can't complete on a pre-sale and who want to, be sure that they're not sued, they're going to have to sell and walk away from their deposit and possibly inject some cash. But there's still some of those deals out there, and for those who have cash and credit on the sidelines, that's the greatest opportunity I see.
Absolutely. Heidi mentioned, glad you didn't get fined, Kelly. Sounds like a rough year you had. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Kelly. We're going to move into our hot deal segment now. So we are going to get this next one rocking and rolling, and then we'll be able to get you guys on your way. Now, one of the things that I've been noticing in the market as we start to look at what's happening out there from a hot deal perspective, there are absolutely cash flowing opportunities that have come back into our market. A big reason for that is, one, prices have come down, but also the interest rates have also come down over the last year and a bit. And while we are seeing rents on the decline, because they had skyrocketed so much and the decline isn't as sharp as we're seeing on the pricing and interest rates, we are getting back into some cash flow zones. So tonight we actually have 3 hot deals for you guys today. And these are something that, would have been bread and butter for us way back in the day. So we're seeing these regular deals coming back now. First and foremost, though, we do have the Princeton Point. This is in Princeton, British Columbia. Now, this is a pre-sale. However, there's some things that we really like about this pre-sale that make this community stand out to what we're seeing here in the Lower Mainland. For anyone who knows Princeton, it is basically a place where people mostly stop, grab a quick, fill up the gas, grab a quick lunch, and drive straight through. However, there's a lot of stuff happening in the Princeton area, including a ton of job growth right now. We're seeing a high demand for rentals because of the job growth. And so this Princeton Point here also, because of the current population in the area, is also exempt from a few key factors here. One, foreign buyers ban tax exempt. So if you have a foreign buyer tax exempt, it should say just foreign buyer ban exempt. So we do have the foreign buyer ban in Canada. They are exempt in this area from that. So you don't have to worry. If you do know someone who wants to invest, you can absolutely do that. There are no short-term rental restrictions. This is an area that does not fall under this short-term rental act. And the reason is because the population falls under 10,000. And a big key component is because municipalities can opt in if they want to adopt these bylaws. This area has said, no, we absolutely need short-term housing due to the mine, due to what's happening in agriculture. They've got increases in industrial things going on right now. So this area is absolutely in high demand right now for short term. And so the mayor and the council said, we aren't going to adopt that. We are going to keep this an Airbnb friendly area. And the vacancy rate because of it is less than 1%. And here's the prices. When was the last time that you saw studios starting under, 300,000, let alone 269.9? One bedrooms at 339, 2 bedrooms at 419, and 2 bed and dens up to 709. There's 0% of assignment fee, and the deposit structure that we have with the developers right now is fantastic. 2.5%. So 2.5% on $269,000 is you can put that on a credit card essentially. Then another 2.5 in 90 days, and then 5%. So you do end up at 10% at the end of the day. But initially, Initially, you are spreading out your deposit requirements significantly with this development, and the estimated completion date will be 2027. Now, because you can run it on Airbnb, this is what it looks like if you have an Airbnb running in there. We based this off of one of the 2-bedroom units. So inclusive of GST are going to be at about $440,000 for the listing price. The gross rent we estimate is $4,340 a month. Yes, on a condo, 2-bedroom condo, Airbnb in Princeton. We're basing this off of $200 a night with a 70% occupancy. Now, according to the developer and their team, they were going and staying in hotels there. They have some really old hotels right now. So we're talking 1 rooms with a bathroom, and they're charging anywhere from $125 to $150 a night. So it's not unrealistic to get $200 a night for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, brand new condo. In fact, I think that's a highly conservative number as well. Obviously, you got property taxes, insurance, utilities, repairs. We put property management in there at 18%. The developer has partnered with a property management company that deals in Airbnbs. The gentleman, his name is Mr. Airbnb himself. So he will be able to take on management. He has mentioned to them cable, internet, Airbnb fees, strata fees, other supplies and other costs, plus your mortgage. Cash flow on this thing at about $734 a month. And that is assuming a 70% occupancy and $200 a night. You're going to have times in the summertime where you're going to have higher cash flow, and you might have some downtimes as well. This is very conservative in my opinion. And when I brought these numbers to the developer, because they had their numbers, they thought my numbers were very conservative. Total investment to get into this property when the property is complete is around $114,000. So it's a great one for anyone who has got some equity in their homes, ready to invest a property. And again, you're not locking all of that up front. 2.5, then 10, and then close in about 2.5 years. We assumed a bit of a higher interest rate at 4.89%. We do know people are getting interest rates right now lower than this, as well as by the time this completes, we don't know where rates are going to go, but there is a chance that they might need to stimulate the economy over the next couple of years. We might see those rates go down a bit. This is where Princeton is for those of you guys who are tuning in who've never even heard of Princeton. As you can see, it is east of Chilliwack and Hope, just north of Manning Park there. And here's what ends up happening is that a lot of the workers right now are actually staying in Merritt, Penticton, Osoyoos, and even going as far as Hope sometimes in order to just go out and work there. That means they're traveling nearly an hour to get into the mines to work. So we absolutely need housing in this area. And the city themselves have put a mandate that they are aiming to put between 300 to 500 new homes in over the next 5 years. This building is the start of that with 150 units. And that is your return on your investment. Absolutely powerfully strong cash flow. So if you guys are interested in this, make sure you guys hit me up, Cameron@kellyfryteam.com, and I can send you all of the information about this project. We've got all the floor plates, floor plans, pricing lists, everything like that. Great, strong returns in Princeton, British Columbia. All right, bringing it closer to home here, we've got a house out in Mission, British Columbia. This is a 5-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's got 2 suites. I estimate conservatively the rent's at around $2,650 for the 3-bedroom up and $16 for the 2-bedroom down. When I was looking online, I was seeing quite a bit of advertising for almost $3,000 for the 3-bedroom up. So we're trying to be very, very conservative. And that's what we have to do in this market. We have to be extremely conservative on our numbers. So that way, if we outperform anything, that's only going to add cash flow to us, but we're not going to underperform when we're purchasing properties right now. Built in 1983, it is 1,876 square foot house, 8,700 square foot lot, and it's been very tastefully renovated. I was showing Kelly it earlier, and she was surprised. You know, it looks like an older home on the outside, you know, very classic style, but inside you can see those photos below. Nicely, tastefully redone throughout. Very private backyard, and actually backs onto a little bit of a creek area as well. So you've got no neighbors behind you, which is really nice. Now, I broke this into 2 scenarios today because I think it's very important that whenever I run numbers, I always run it as if we're buying it at full list. And that way, if the numbers work and you give the seller what they want, it's going to work no matter what you negotiate. So I've done 2 scenarios, one at list to show you that it's still cash flows, and one to show if you did some negotiation, what that improvement would cause in the cash flow. So the listing price right now is $875,000. Now, again, a couple of years ago, wasn't these numbers were closer to $1 million. Wasn't uncommon to see something go for 150 in the area. So definitely have come down on prices. Got opportunity to buy. Gross rent potential between the two suites around $4,250 a month. Expenses include property taxes, insurance. I put a vacancy loss now at 2%. We used to run these at 1%, and obviously with the way things are going, we've increased that just to offset your vacancy a little bit. And again, being very conservative. It is fully renovated, kept the repairs at 1%. Your mortgage, total cash flow on this property at the listing price is $151 a month. This is a great little cash flowing property that we used to sell all the time, prior to the market going crazy during COVID. So you can absolutely do some great little cash flow here. Total investment into a property like this, about $193,000. And we assumed 80% loan to financing, 4.4% on the interest rate, and a 30-year amortization. So your total return will be about 20%. So assuming a 3% appreciation and equity over the 3 years, cash on cash, just under 1%. However, here's the kicker. We're in a market set for buyers and investors. You guys can go out and actually put offers in on properties, something we hadn't seen during the pandemic. And this is where investors can now really start taking advantage. So I still kept it pretty conservative, assuming that we can negotiate maybe $25,000 off of the price. So I'm not talking like we're lowballing the heck out of them. If you go in maybe 30 or 40,000 under and you settle 25K, this is what the numbers are going to look at. $850,000 purchase. Obviously, your rent's not changing. Most of your expenses won't change. Your mortgage goes down just slightly, less financing required. And your cash flow goes up by $100. Now you've got a cash flowing property about $250 a month, stable, tenants paying down your mortgage, and future appreciation if you hold. Total investment into this is now $188,000 because less down payment required and kept the same mortgage assumptions. So now your cash flow goes, cash on cash goes to 1.6% and increases your total return to 21.13 by negotiating smart in the market right now. The other key thing that I did note on the listing is that the lot, based on the lot, of course, you'd have to do your own due diligence with the city. According to the listing, this lot can hold up to 4 units as well, with some of the new legislation out there. So this could be one of those ones where you buy it, sit on it, and eventually someone wants to come and build, or you could build yourself in the future. All right, now for the investors who have a little less cash in the bank, you're trying to get into the investments, we've got a townhouse here. Kathy, I know you mentioned time to buy some townhouses. Got one here for you right now, 3-bedroom plus den and 2-bath unit over on Wolf Road in Chilliwack. Kelly's very familiar with Wolf Road. She's sold quite a few units over the years in this area to investors for the purpose of just holding rentals. It's a 2,135 square foot unit built in 1971. And the kicker here is they just passed a levy for a new roof. So the owners currently are paying for that new roof. So you would get that benefit of that. Here is scenario 1. Again, breaking it the same way. Buying it based on full list versus if we can negotiate a good deal on it. Listing price is $470,000. I believe it's about 24 days on the market right now, if I remember correctly. Gross rent, I was finding online around $3,000 to $3,100 was where most of the things were sitting, between what I found on Marketplace for similar units to I saw on, we use Rate My Rent-O-Meter quite a bit. That was in the 3,000s. So I'm trying to be super conservative. As you can see, $2,850 a month. Expenses, insurance, property tax, vacancy at 2% again, repairs, association fees, because we do have strata fees in this case, our mortgage, total cash flow, nice little cash flowing $100 a month. Anywhere but Chilliwack, Kathy says. All right, well, we can talk about where you want to go for a townhouse, Kathy. So here's the investment. So you're looking at about $114,000. So you can either invest into a pre-construction condo in Princeton for around the same price that you can buy a townhouse for the same price in Chilliwack. Okay, we return on investment. We've got cash on cash at 1.18%, return on equity of 5.96 and 13.52 on appreciation. Total return being 20%, 20.65%. All right, and then scenario number 2, if we get a little bit of a discount on there, we are going to be listing price of $450,000. I took $20,000 off. Again, not uncommon in today's market to get around $10,000 to $20,000 off the price of a property. So we got the same rents, everything. Your mortgage goes down a little bit because you negotiated a little harder, and now your cash flow goes up to $181 a month, and you just pay now a little under $100,000. So great little property to purchase there. And then you increase your cash on cash to 2.18% for a total of 21.66% total return on investment. So those are your hot deals tonight. As you can see, cash flow is back in the market. As investors, we need to go out, take advantage of it. Now, flip out your phones. We got some QR codes for you guys. So if you're watching the screen, feel free to scan them. First and foremost, scan here for all of our social media. If you guys would like to follow us on our team's YouTube channel, of course, don't forget, hit that subscribe. You guys are watching here today. Help me grow this channel so we can keep offering more value here on the Cameron Manning channel. But this will give you to the Kelly Fry team Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, everything like that. This is if you want to subscribe to this channel. You're already watching on it, so make sure you hit that subscribe right below where you see the video. So it's like right below us right here. And of course, we've got the Manning Up on Real Estate podcast. We've been dropping more episodes. I actually just dropped a pretty serious episode that you're going to want to go check it out. The audio version will be coming out very soon on Spotify and Apple, but on the YouTube channel that we have for this, it's pretty hard talking about what's going to happen with the pre-construction market right now and what the long-term effects are going to be. We're basically saying what we can see is that we're going to have a really rough period for anyone doing pre-construction in and around the Lower Mainland. However, because they're struggling, it's going to cause housing issues for us long-term if we don't get enough properties built. So go check that one out. Subscribe to that channel as well. Really help me out. Really appreciate it. And of course, join our online community on Facebook. Great opportunity to get to know other investors, post any deals that you guys are working on. Would love to keep the chats going there following today into that group. And for everyone who is watching all the way to this point, I see we still have 30 people live with us. We are inviting all of you guys out on August 31st to the Yaletown Brew Pub from 2 to 5 p.m. This is an event that we host annually where we like to just have some fun. We're going to be buying you guys drinks, appies. We're going to have music. We're going to have photo booths and just a great time to network with all of you amazing investors out there. So make sure you guys scan on that to RSVP. We do want to make sure that we've got, the numbers so we know how much food we got to order and everything. And I just want to give a shout out to all of our amazing sponsors, which you can see on the bottom there. We've got Latitude West Financial as our platinum sponsor. So Christian, thank you so much for sponsoring with us. Our gold sponsors include Garton and Harris Lawyers, who was the one that Kelly was talking about, who recommended his criminal lawyer. So, he has helped us out a lot. So again, he's sponsoring this, as well as Lightwell Homes. They're a builder developer in Vancouver. They're doing some really interesting stuff in the multi-unit space now that there's the new legislation. And of course, all of our amazing bronze sponsors, which include Green Mortgage Team, Thunder Clean, Greater Vancouver Property, Tenant and Service Management Services, Paragon Roofing, and of course, sorry, I can't see that last one. It's so small there. Apex Construction as well. So thank you guys so much. And of course, our next meeting is going to be on September 18th. We should be back live in person for that one. And of course, live streaming for all of you guys who join us here. So don't make sure you guys don't miss out on that one. Join us on Meetup or join us on the Facebook group. That's where we post all of the information as to when new meetings are happening. And we can't wait to see you guys at the Yaletown Brew Pub coming up next month. Thank you guys so much. Barney, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate all of you guys tonight. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your August, and we'll see you on the 31st if you can make it. Thanks again.